All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out here today. So let's think back to 2016 or so. Everybody will remember that we had a spike in homicides in a city, all cities around this part of the country as the opioid crisis started emerging. Many of the cities also saw a spike in homicides. In 2016, we had about 117 homicides in our city. You all covered many of these. Almost every news story was about what's happening in the city with homicides. Well, fortunately, we put together an excellent plan led by LMPD and then our federal partners. We've seen a 30% decrease from the peak of our homicides and shootings in 2016. That shows you how important it is to have resources and good people and good partnerships to react to situations that happen inevitably in any city. This past year, 2018, we had the fewest number of violent crimes perpetrated in our city in over 6 years. What I hope people take away from this is that we have a very capable Louisville Metro Police Department, great leadership, great values, working hard every day to be both reactive and proactive as it relates to making sure that Louisville is a safe city. So whenever you get a chance to thank an LMPD officer, please do so. These are folks that put their lives on the line for us each and every day. So our city is getting safer. We all see that, the numbers show that, and that's a fantastic achievement for us. So it makes no sense to do anything that would make the people of Louisville less safe. But that is a possibility because you all have been covering this story, and it's a possibility because of the $65 million budget challenge that our city faces as a result of the Kentucky retirement system's changes in calculating our pension obligation, not just for the city of Louisville, but cities and counties all over Kentucky. Now, people ask, do we have to make cuts or consider cuts in public safety? For context, we devote a majority of our city budget, about 2/3, to public safety every year because public safety is the first responsibility of government. And if you look at the numbers of taking police officers off the street, closing firehouses, and dramatically reducing our efforts to cure violence, impacting our Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, these are not the indicators of a city on the rise. And Louisville is a city on the rise. You see that with 80,000 new jobs, 2,700 businesses, $13 billion in capital investment. So we've got good momentum going on in our city. And for the men and women of LMPD and all of our public safety officials who put their lives on the line for us each and every day, I think we need to do better than this. We need to demonstrate that we have a commitment to public safety. We do not want to go backwards. They deserve the training, the equipment, and the support that's so critical to the work in our city. Obviously, I've got a strong belief in our public safety officials and LMPD. There have been turmoil over the years. People question this, people question that. What people have seen is we develop plans that are appropriate to the situation at hand. We put the right people on the job, and we get results. And I intend to keep fighting for these folks and for these plans and for the momentum that we've got going on in our city. You can study the budget plan or the budget challenge that we have at louisvilleky.gov/budgetfy1920. We've put forth a gradual revenue plan that would allow us to not have these drastic cuts. And we're talking about 250 police officers, closing 4 fire stations, closing 4 libraries, zeroing out issues like our community ministries, our external agency funding for the arts, et cetera, et cetera. You all have seen it. It's quite brutal, but that's what $65 million is. Some folks have said that I'm trying to scare people. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to give you the reality of the situation if we have to make $65 million in cuts. And I think the people of Louisville deserve to know what that is. The option, of course, is to raise revenue through an insurance premium tax, which is our only method of doing so. I wish we had more options, but we don't have them from Frankfurt. That's another part of the issue here. So it's cuts, it's revenue, some responsible combination thereof, And all of that will be decided on March 21st at a vote of the Metro Council. So we've made too much progress as a city. We've certainly made too much progress as public safety to turn back now. So we're going to keep fighting for our city, to invest in our city, and keep making our city even safer. So please now help me in welcoming Chief Conrad, who's going to talk to us about what these potential cuts could mean for our officers in public safety in Louisville. Chief?
Mayor, thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, good morning. Mayor, thank you as always for your support of our department and of our needs. Behind me, you'll see the men and women who are police recruits in Metro Academy Class 43. They're going through their classes and training on vehicle operations. This is just one of the many topics that they will learn over their 6-month academy, and we are very excited to get them to the point they can complete their training and get out on the street, because we need their help. And I will tell you that hiring recruit classes is critical to our ability to continue to keep our city safe. Every year, we have about 120 officers retire, resign, or leave the department under different circumstances. And every year, we try to hire 3 recruit classes to make sure that we have a continuing resource of young men and women that want to come to do this job and to serve this community. And without the ability to be able to do that, we will not be able to continue to meet the city's needs as we've been doing over the past couple of years. The thought of us dealing with the cuts that have been proposed would involve us not hiring any recruit classes for a year. Between the inability to bring in those officers and the potential to see attrition of 100 to 120 officers over that same time period would have a devastating effect on our ability to be able to address crime in our community. I mean, everybody wants a safer community. Everybody wants to continue to see things moving forward, but I can't promise you that we're going to be able to continue to work at the rate that we are. And as the mayor mentioned, this problem doesn't go away in just a single year. The obligations on the pension system continue to increase year after year for the next 4 fiscal years. The net difference in our department would take us from about 1,250 sworn members down to less than 1,000. And with those kinds of reductions, we're not going to be able to do what we're doing. I will tell you that if we see these cuts, in the next year, the community will notice the difference. It will take us longer to respond to citizens' calls for service. It will take us longer to do follow-up investigations to crimes. It will take us longer to respond to complaints about narcotics trafficking in our community. It will also mean that some of the units we've come to depend on to help us in certain situations, like our SWAT team or our narcotics division, will start getting smaller because we will be pulling detectives and officers from those units and putting them back on patrol to supplement for the loss of people that we have coming into the department. The same thing will happen with us getting rid of our school resource officers to put those 17 officers back into patrol, our mounted patrol to put those officers back into patrol, because we know that we're going to need to continue to put officers on the street and to meet that basic need of patrolling our city. It is critical that we have the support that we need, that we are able to continue the progress that we've made over the last 2 years. The mayor has talked about it. We've seen decreases in homicides. Violent crime is down, property crime is down. We need to continue that trend. And I am so concerned that the hard work and the sacrifice of the men and women of this department and the hard work of citizens who have stepped up and gotten involved and pick up the phone and called us when they see things going on will evaporate, and we will go the other direction and start seeing ourselves in a much worse situation than we were even back in 2016. We need to continue the progress, and we cannot do that without support. And I am hopeful that the Metro Council will do the right thing and get us the resources that we need.
Thank you, Chief. One of the questions that comes up is, why do you have to impact public safety? And the answer is obviously because that's where the majority of our budget is. 2/3 of the budget is in public safety. And so just for some context on all this, we could eliminate all of our funding for metro parks, which includes our community centers, eliminate all of the funding to the libraries, eliminate all the funding to the Louisville Zoo, eliminate all the funding to Metro Animal Services, and eliminate our Codes and Regulations Department. Eliminate all of those, and we'd still be millions of dollars short of meeting our pension obligation, which we're legally required to do. So that's why when we're taking a look at potential reductions of this type of magnitude, public safety is part of the discussion. And I think then the larger question is, what kind of city do we want to be? We see ourselves as a growing city. The numbers indicate that, a place where businesses are investing. The numbers indicate that as well. And we're competing against cities, Nashville, Indianapolis, and others around here that are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in their cities every year, way above what we're doing in quality of place issues like parks and streetscapes, roads, transportation, etc. Those type of investments are important. And we're not even talking about that right now. We're talking about keeping our operating budget at the level that it has been at the past. So that's why everything's on the table right now. And as we've indicated, there's a revenue plan that can forestall these type of cuts as well. So we're hopeful that the council, who we're working very close with, we're having lots of great community meetings. One of the benefits of this is people are starting to understand more how city government works as well. And I'm sure that's what will continue to take place here over the next month before the vote on March 21st. So thank you all for coming out this morning, and we'll take a couple questions if there are any. Yeah, what we're seeing at the community meetings is a combination. We're seeing people that there's always going to be an anti-tax crowd. Then there's other people coming to the meetings that are saying these cuts are too drastic. We need our police officers. I want my library open. What we're seeing is when people personalize what's going to happen to the cuts, that they're saying we can't do this. The other thing we're seeing at community meetings is that people don't really understand a lot of the issues that are taking place. Some of the questions we're getting are like, why can't we legalize marijuana in Louisville and tax it to pay for this? Why can't we put an extra tax on bourbon and pay for this? Obviously, we don't have the ability to do that. Why don't you just quit putting bike lanes in the city? That'll pay for it. You know, bike lanes are $300,000 to $500,000 a year. We need $65 million. So it's educating a lot of folks on how difficult the situation is. So we're going to have to deal with it one way or another. So I've been pleased by the outcome of the public meeting so far, and we'll hope that they're going to continue going. Well, I mean, there's a bunch of outcomes, right? I mean, it's $65 million in cuts, it's $65 million in new revenue, it's some rational combination thereof. So I'm pleased with the way the public is engaging, the council is engaging. One of the challenges is there's 8 new Metro Council members. They've never been through a budget cycle before. So they're having to grasp the entirety of the budget as well and how this fits in with that. So I see people digging in and getting knowledgeable, and I think that's what's important right now. I think we're going to end up in a good place for everybody. I'm sorry, Darcy. I don't know if advocate is the right word. We have no problem with city departments explaining what could happen if there are impacts and cuts in the services that they provide to the community. So those are just facts. We want to make sure that people have facts so that they can weigh into their council members. Yeah, so we started talking about this issue in July of 2017, and that's been addressed in my State of the City address, the past 2 of those, the budget address last April to the Metro Council. So I've been talking about this issue for quite some time. It took the state acting on this in the latter part of last year to determine what the number could be, and then would that solution hold up in the court system. That was all decided in December. And then, of course, we had new Metro Council members come on in January. So we've, in my view, been on top of what the reality of the situation as it's come forward. And now we've got to deal with the numbers as we know them. And what's driving the March 21st date is if there is going to be a change in the insurance premium tax, a 100-day notice is required for the Department of Insurance for that to go into effect July the 1st. Well, $50 million is the actual pension increase from Frankfurt. That number started surfacing in the latter half of last year when the Kentucky Retirement Systems Board started looking at the change in the return assumption. I mean, basically, our system that we're in is not in a crisis. It's called CERS, County Employee Retirement System. We were at a 67% funding level when a 7.5% return on investment assumption was being made by the pension members. That is the national average, by the way, with pension funding, 7.5%. Out of an abundance of caution, and you'd have to ask the Kentucky Retirement System Board on that, they changed the return assumption to 6.25%, which I understand is one of the lowest in the country now. When they reduced that return on investment assumption, it took our potential unfunded liability, or our funded assets, from 67% to 52%, just by changing that assumption. Okay, and then that's what led them to come up with the extra $10 million a year assumption. I'm sorry, I can't. $10 million a year starting with this last fiscal year, an additional $10 million this year, and then $10 million more going through FY23. And that does not go away, okay? So it's $50 million or more every year thereafter, okay? Yeah, I've heard that, and I talked about it all during my re-election campaign, how this was going to be a problem for the city moving forward. And I had an opponent who was a member of the budget committee. She'd never brought it up as an issue. We could have got into it, but I was very forthright that it was going to be a problem for the city. So I'm not quite sure I understand what the criticism is on that. I think that's where we're at right now as a community, as people looking at what the impacts are of these various cut levels, what revenues out there to prohibit it from well. So I mean, that's the natural stage where we're at right now. So I don't hear anybody saying, we got to cut $65 million. But that's a possibility if we don't have some revenue. So I just think this is, as people get more knowledgeable, they're going to decide what's important to them. Public safety is obviously important, but then you go to people that use the libraries. They say they're important to me. Community ministries has a massively positive impact on the city. They say that's important to them, and that's what's making this difficult. I think that's what you're probably feeling, Darcy, and I am, that when people are faced with this is really important to me, but to keep it, I got to raise taxes. That's the kind of conflict they have. I hope people understand that we're putting good light on this, but also look at, if we want to grow as a city and we want to grow like the other cities we say we want to grow at, you have to invest in your city. That's what our competitor cities are doing each and every day. What my responsibility is to be very specific on what the potential cuts could be. So that's what we put forward. Now the stage of the process we're at is having community discussion to see what the community thinks about that. And we're really just about 10 days into that or so. So we're learning and we're observing and we're absorbing. And then, over the next couple of weeks, we'll see where that leads us. But right now we want people to really understand what these city services are that are at peril. Okay. Thank you all.